to have been passed this morning, and I just passed out the letter. I think PDN was able to get the story earlier, but there's a letter with the bill that accompanied the bill that we sent down to the legislature, or sent up to the legislature, and it is yet another effort to hopefully find a resolution to this crisis. But this morning, Chief Joe walked into the office to speak with the governor and the fiscal team, and we wanted to share some of the contents of that conversation, which was not a fun conversation to have. With that,
thank you, Olga. Hafade and good morning, and thank you all for being here. I have asked for this press conference to officially announce the extreme measures that the Guam Fire Department will take in order to meet the governor's orders to execute all cost-saving measures possible, specifically for us, overtime expenditures. The Guam Fire Department's mission is to respond to all emergencies that threaten the life safety and property of our community. This includes emergency medical services by way of ambulance services, first responder services, and advanced life support. We are also the island's primary responders to all hazards, including fires, hazardous material incidents, and environmental emergencies that have immediate threat to the health and safety of our community. The Guam Fire Department is also charged with the staffing and operations of the E911 Center, which is the entry point of all emergencies, including law enforcement response by the Guam Police Department and the many first responder services that may be required to mitigate a particular call. Now, for the past 7 years, I have stressed the importance of adequate staffing to meet the requirements set forth by OSHA and National Fire Protection Association programs that ensure not only the safety of the community, but also the safety of your firefighters, emergency medical technicians, and other emergency personnel within the Guam Fire Department. We are now facing a situation that has given me no choice but to degrade our ability to meet our mission mandates, which could ultimately result in the loss of life, or at the very least, lessen our community's confidence that life-saving measures are available, which endangers the quality of life for all. To that point, the Guam Fire Department will make effective this Sunday, March 4th, 2018, at 0800 hours or 8 a.m. the following. 1. The closure of PD and Estumbo fire stations and the unit assigned, which include the fire trucks in PD and the fire truck and ambulance in Estumbo. We will combine our 2 advanced life support units that respond to over 1,200 calls a year into 1. We will merge the Adelup fire truck and the Rescue 1 unit, whose primary responsibility is land search and rescue and the operation of the jaws of life to extricate trapped victims, into 1 unit. 4. To reduce all fire truck and rescue unit staffing to a crew of 3, 1 less than the OSHA and NFPA required staffing for all hazard response. And 5, to place on a reduced schedule our Code Enforcement Bureau, which will result in significant delay in plans review and fire inspections for the various permits to operate businesses and events. Now, these measures will reduce the cost of overtime in order to achieve the directed pro rata cut of 10%, or $2.7 million for fiscal year 2018. Now, I have pleaded with the governor and the fiscal team to find a solution to prevent the closure of fire stations and the degradation of services. But whatever assistance that can be provided is restricted by cash flow. I am now imploring my oversight chair, Senator Talena Nelson, and the 34th Guam Legislature to resolve this crisis before these measures are to take effect, because this cannot happen. When I first took the lead of GFD, we were faced with numerous challenges, but working together, we were able to make significant improvements to life-saving services. To the senators, the community of Guam deserves the life-saving services that every single one of you promised to the voters. I, as your fire chief, am urging all of you to come up with a solution that will resolve this issue and not compromise the safety of our people. Thank you. I am now available for any questions.
Chief, can you tell us how much will these steps save?
On an average pay period, I am now expending up to $200,000 a pay period on irregular overtime. And so these measures will eliminate all that extra overtime of $200,000.
So all of these steps
Combined.
Correct. Will save $200,000?
Yes.
But I thought you said that $200,000 was the overtime only. No?
Correct. We're eliminating overtime as a whole, which is we expend $200,000 in overtime a pay period.
But the shutting of the fire stations, won't that be a savings there as well?
I believe that shutting down the fire stations, the savings there is negligible. We're talking about utilities at most, which is again negligible to the big picture. And you won't go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
By shutting down overtime, we reduce those services, which negates the need to have those fire stations open, or even the ability for me to do so if I wanted to keep it open anyway.
Can you explain what other options you looked into besides taking these measures?
Sure. Well, in order to arrive at these decision points, three particular factors are taken into consideration primarily. Number one is population, and two is time, and three is distance, time of response. Okay, so these three factors are considered, looking at geographic factors, the closest hospital, where they're located, to include our relationships with our federal and military counterparts, and then the strategic or geographic locations of our other fire stations. These are the factors that are considered when determining the priority order of which stations we would close first, and so forth. And depending on our ability to provide these services, what we can keep in service.
So if the legislature passes a bill this afternoon, you would rescind this order?
Absolutely. This is to take effect at 8 o'clock on Sunday, all the way up to 7:59 a.m. on Sunday morning. I am willing to accept any solution it takes to keep these fire stations open.
But yet, if a bill passes and the new bill that's been introduced is back to the business privilege tax, the new funds won't be available until May.
No,
So,
what the fiscal team is prepared to do is help them with their cash flow, so that we can assist them and fill in any sort of gaps, because it's a matter of managing cash flow over a period of time. Yeah.
So I mean, in other words, there's enough cash to get through until the business privilege tax, if it passes, kicks in.
If it passes,
Right.
Because at least then we'll have a light at the end of the tunnel, right? And that's why we've been fighting so hard for this, because we'll then be able to say, okay, we can kind of pull from here and here, to make ends meet for the time being, for like the next few weeks.
right. So these measures, as extreme as they are and as immediate that they have to happen, is intended to save us from shutting down all stations towards the end of this fiscal year. And so we've been tasked to start these cost-saving measures so that we can, as you stated, take advantage of the available cash throughout the rest of the fiscal year.
But if it's a cash flow or a cash allocation issue, the governor has the ability to take money from other places if it's an emergency, instead of like what would most people consider to be a priority, which is public safety, fire department, hospital.
Right. So
Why can't it be addressed that way?
This was exactly some of the inquiries that I made when I came in, because when we look at it from the surface level, yes, public safety is a priority. However, to include the AG's opinion, to take from other agencies will ultimately result in furloughs across the board, or across in those agencies. So that's something that I believe the term is, the hands are tied to a point where we can't take from those other agencies, because that will result in furloughs in order to support the Guam Fire Department.
How would this affect response times if it were to go into effect?
So the Guam Fire Department follows NFPA standards, which requires, depending on the unit, in general, 4 to 8 minutes from a 911 call. This includes the two minutes given to dispatch a unit, and then requires that within 4 to 8 minutes that we have a unit on scene to at least 90% of the calls. With the closure of these particular stations for the general population of PD and the Stumbo area of Derido, this will increase our response time by more than 15 minutes from the nearest fire station. Now, the Guam Fire Department operates with the term that's known as the golden hour. And that is a medical term that's used that it is our mission, or the advantage is to get a patient from the time that they call an emergency, or the time that, for instance, as an example, a chest pains begin and they have a heart attack. I have 1 hour to get them to the hospital. Otherwise, their life-saving or their potential to stay alive or to live drops significantly, below 50%.
So
Chief,
15 minutes?
Is it true that a Stumbo fire station is not really going to be closed, that a rescue unit is going to be moved there, and the units from Stumbo are just going to, you kind of mentioned they're going to merge with Derido, but is the Stumbo fire station actually going to be physically closed, lights off, or is there a rescue unit that's going to be moved there?
No, it's going to be physically closed. Like I stated in one of our measures, we're going to combine the rescue unit that you mentioned, which is located at the Derido fire station, and the fire truck that is also located there. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to have a crew of 4 there that will, depending on which run comes up first, will take the unit that they need. If it's a fire emergency, all 4 personnel will jump on the fire truck and respond. If it's a emergency that requires the jaws of life, for instance, extricating a trapped victim, then all 4 personnel will jump on the rescue unit.
So 0 personnel at a Stumbo fire station, lights off.
Correct, to include the PD fire station.
And then with the PD fire station, why was that station selected when it's so close to the port, to other potentially hazardous areas like the power plants, the fuel farm?
So like I stated, the several factors of why we chose different stations to include the call volume. We have Agat Fire Station that's roughly about 15 minutes away. The next responding station over is also Tumuning. There is the mutual aid program that we have in effect that includes Naval Hospital and the Nimitz Hill fire stations from the federal, although they do not negate the need for a PD fire station. Those were factors that we did consider. The Port Authority through our Fire Prevention Bureau, the Port Authority has a very strong fire prevention program. They do pass all our fire inspections, our code enforcement programs. And so with that reduces also the potential for a huge event. However, I will say that we did recently have one at the port that resulted in the shutting down of the port for a couple of hours. And it was the Guam Fire Department that responded and provided the information that they needed to reopen the port.
Do you have existing MOUs with the federal firefighting units that you can tap into in extreme emergencies?
Yes, and that is our mutual aid agreements that we have in place, which allows us to assist them should they need our assistance, and then for them to also assist us. But again, these are less than ideal cases and situations, and it's always a case-by-case basis. The federal and military departments have their mission as well, their priorities, and of course that's pretty much within the gates of the military bases and other federal property. And so they become a secondary option for us.
Instead of closing fire stations, couldn't you take staff off of 24-hour shifts, put them on 12-hour shifts?
Okay, so the firefighter schedule is a schedule that has been tried and true for forever, for a long time. The firefighter schedule as it is today is a cost-saving measure within itself. Remember that we go by a ratio of 2.3. For every one firefighter, you have to hire 2.3 other firefighters to provide the most basic fire service to the community. we are not like other peace officers where you place one officer on the street and you have law enforcement. For us, it's in order to provide fire services, you need a minimum of 4 personnel with over $100,000 worth of equipment trained and ready to respond at any given time. So just to, this might be going into a little bit or too much detail, but if we were to go with an 8-hour or 12-hour schedule, that means you need to hire, just to cover a 24-hour period, you need to hire 4 personnel for each shift. That's, if it's an 8-hour schedule, that's a total of 12. If it's a 12-hour schedule, that's a total of 8.
So it wouldn't save.
It would not save. As a matter of fact, that the schedule as it is a cost-saving measure. It's done in the federal, it's done in the military, and it's likewise done in fire services across the nation.
So if I can go back to my earlier question, and no offense, but you provide what is considered a vital public service, yet your agency has been singled out at this time. There's been no other announcements of other agencies taking these kinds of drastic measures. So it kind of begs the question that, is this just for show to put pressure on the legislature to pass something to get what the governor wants done? Or can you kind of justify why it's the fire department that's being singled out?
Sure. Well, first of all, the fire department is my sole responsibility. That's what I've been tasked to take care of. I've been given direction by the governor to find ways to absorb this pro rata cut and justify it, and I've done so. I presented the plan, and I leave it to the governor and the fiscal team to determine what goes forward and what is to be released. I am certain that all the other agencies are doing exactly the same thing that I'm doing, minus the fact that it's not coming out to you by way of press release doesn't mean it's not happening. But I myself I'm making it a point to defend the services that we provide, to make sure that the public, the community we serve, the legislature, and the governor is reminded that the fire service is a very important service that the government needs to maintain. It's a life-saving service, and I'm doing everything in my power, because otherwise I will not be able to sleep good at night, and none of you should be able to sleep good at night knowing that we're going to shut down a fire station. And so I'm going to implore our leaders to do whatever they got to do to come to a consensus and find the solution and not allow me to shut down these stations.
By taking these actions, are you decreasing your ability to protect life and property?
Yes.
Which is your mission?
Yes. That's the reality.
The governor.
And make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a show. I will shut down those stations as directed, and until instructed otherwise.
What's going to happen to the PD fire personnel?
They will be dispersed around the stations to meet our staffing requirements at those locations. Again, we are shutting down because of overtime expenditures. So that means, as I've been stating for years now, we have been critically short-staffed. And right in the middle of trying to recruit a fire cycle, this situation is happening. And so even if we were to bring on new people at a much lesser cost, that still we will not see a true relief for another 6 months in that regard.
Chief, historically, the Office of Public Accountability has been critical of the pay of firefighters. And recently, I think it was about a month ago, Doris Flores Brooks was before the Rotary Club. She said the average pay of a firefighter is $90,000. That's a problem.
So the fire service again is traditional, tried and true. Across the nation, that's the exact same issues that are brought up as a concern. But really, I've already submitted a white paper when I first took the office of fire chief that did the analysis of why it's a cost-saving measure. While it might take the average of $90,000 per firefighter, the return on investment is much more with regard to lives saved.
So that's justified.
It's absolutely justified.
So this could put, safety of lives we're talking about here in jeopardy. Why cut here? Why not cut from some other government agency? Maybe
Those
Sawyer
cuts
can
are
answer
being
that.
made all over the.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's the point that hasn't sunk in. This is government wide. The reason why Chief Joey decided to come out today is because he sat in.
There's nothing else that could be cut that would keep fire stations open.
We were told yesterday that that there are no exemptions on the furloughs.
So I
There's no
came in here.
overtime and other agencies that can be cut.
Oh no,
Overtime
everyone's
and
cutting
DPW.
overtime.
Everyone's cutting
cutting
overtime.
overtime. We said this a few weeks ago. Overtime in all agencies is being cut. They're even talking about there are contract employees. They're called limited term employments. They're not being renewed. So we have folks who are going to be out of a job as soon as next week because we're not rehiring them. We can't rehire them.
This is a life-saving agency. Why can't the governor reprogram funds?
He just asked that. And let me reiterate. It's a government-wide situation. You see what I'm saying? It's government-wide. It's a financial crunch that we are in currently. And we just need a bridge. We just need to bridge this gap. This is something that we're capable. I know we can get over this. And I know that our senators, I know that our governor, we all want the same thing, and that is stability of the government. We want to make sure that the government is able to provide these life-saving services, health services, education services to the people of Guam.
Chief, did you say a few minutes ago that if nothing is done, all stations might be threatened?
Correct. If we don't start these cost-saving measures, the projected appropriations or revenue or cash available to get me through the rest of the year could result in the closure of all stations. Really, the bottom line is it does cost money to provide the services that we provide. Firefighters do come in and they need to be paid for the services they provide, and if we don't have enough or if we can't give them their paychecks, then I can't faithfully ask them to come in and volunteer their time. Otherwise, I mean, we need to take care of those that take care of others, and the men have done a lot from their heart. They've dug out of their pocket to provide all the other things such as maintaining our equipment, maintaining our fire stations. We've seen it all the time. They've dug out of their pocket to also contribute to the community and to keep our services running. And so, this is just the situation we're in. The men and women of the fire department are faithful servants. They will do their best where they can, when they can. But the bottom line is it is the cost of providing these services.
Overtime, I think historically has been an integral part of the firefighter's paycheck. Is that correct? Salary?
Correct.
So if you're going to cut on overtime, so they're going to, in effect, see a cut in pay this coming pay period?
Yeah, so there is a difference. Now, I stated irregular overtime. Okay, so the work schedule, the standard work schedule is 120 hours for a firefighter. I have firefighters that are working a lot more than that, and that's the overtime. And so, yes, they will see a significant drop in overtime, a significant drop in pay. So they are themselves also taking a hit, taking a decrease in their annual salary.
So overtime per se is still in effect. It's the irregular overtime. What percentage of their work schedule is irregular overtime?
Right now, the average firefighter is averaging anywhere from 24 to 48 hours of irregular overtime. Right? So the definition of overtime is irregular and unscheduled. That is overtime, plain and simple. Okay, so they work 120 hour schedule. It does come with its own compensation requirements as stated in subsection 6219 for firefighter pay. It's the same as in the federal government, it's the same in the military. Any hour above that for the Guam Fire Department is considered overtime, which is unscheduled and irregular.
Just so I'm clear, so 100.
Lester, this
so
is the
they're gonna
last. I'm
continue-
sorry.
they're-
This is
they're
gonna be the
gonna
last question.
Okay, they're going to continue to work 120 hours. It's the irregular overtime that's what you're cutting.
Correct.
And, but is that part of their regular routine though, or is
Yes.
that just like if there's a fire or if there's some extenuating circumstances? Do they typically work those extra irregular hours on a bi-monthly?
Yes, if there is a fire that crosses over their shift, I think that's the question that you're asking. They will fight that fire till it's over, and then we will adjust our schedule to ensure that we do not dip into overtime time schedule.
Okay.
Can
Thanks,
you say
everybody.
how many LTAs there are?
I have 0 in the Guam Fire Department.
0 LTAs.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Let's do that. Although actually, to be fair, I wouldn't remember.
All right, so there you have it from Fire Chief Joey St-Nicholas and GFD spokesman Kevin Riley and the governor's spokesperson Oya Ngiyarekla. So effective Sunday, the fire department